My name is Claire Merritt. I am 32 years old, and I run a legal technology company out of Nashville that serves over 400 law firms across the country. 3 years ago, my brother stopped returning my calls. My parents stopped inviting me to holidays. And the woman I once considered my closest friend, my sister-in-law, sent me a single text that said, "You need to stop causing problems for this family." I never found out what problems they meant. No one ever explained. They simply disappeared from my life the way a door closes quietly in another room. Last Thursday, all three of them walked into my office at 11 in the morning without an appointment. My brother sat down at my conference table, opened a folder, and told me he wanted 30% of everything I had built. I smiled at him. And then I said something that made my mother put her hand over her mouth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Please like this video and subscribe to HeartPath Stories, because this is something I've needed to say out loud for a very long time. The morning it happened started like any other. I had a 9 o'clock call with a firm in Dallas, a product review at 10:30, and a working lunch with my head of engineering. My assistant, a sharp and steady woman named Priya, had my day blocked down to the half hour. I was on my second coffee when she knocked on my glass door and stepped in with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Somewhere between confused and cautious. "Claire," she said, "there are 3 people at the front desk. They don't have an appointment." She paused. "They say they're your family." I set my mug down slowly. "Which family?" She tilted her head slightly. "They said your brother. And your parents." The office suddenly felt very quiet, even though I could hear keyboards and phones and the low hum of a normal Thursday morning just beyond my walls. I had not spoken to my brother in 3 years. I had not seen my parents in almost as long. The last time I tried to call my mother, the call went to voicemail and stayed there. "Put them in the small conference room," I said. "Not the main one. I'll be there in 5 minutes." Priya nodded and left. I stood up from my desk, walked to the window, and looked out at the street below for a moment. 3 years. No birthdays, no holidays, no explanations. And now they were 40 feet away from me, sitting in a room with my company's name on the door. I straightened my jacket and walked down the hall. When I pushed open the conference room door, my brother was already leaning back in his chair like he owned it. My mother sat beside him, her hands folded neatly on the table. My father stood near the window, hands in his pockets, surveying the room with the quiet approval of a man who had expected something smaller. My brother looked up and gave me a smile that I recognized immediately. It was the same smile he used in every negotiation he had ever told me about. Warm on the surface, calculating underneath. "Claire," he said, "you look good." I stayed near the door. "You should have called." My mother's expression shifted just slightly. "We thought it would be better to come in person." She glanced around the room. "This is a beautiful office." "What do you want?" I asked. My father turned from the window. "Is that how we're doing this? No hello, no how are you." "You haven't called me in 3 years," I said. "I think we can skip the pleasantries." My brother unfolded his hands and leaned forward. "We're here because we have an opportunity, a real one. Something that benefits all of us." He slid a folder across the table toward me. "I want you to look at that before you say anything." I didn't touch it. "Tell me what's in it first." He smiled again. "It's a partnership structure. My firm and your company, combined resources. You handle the technology side, I handle the legal strategy and client acquisition. Together we go after the enterprise market." I looked at him for a long moment. My brother had his own small law practice in Memphis. 12 attorneys, solid regional reputation, nothing exceptional. He had been trying to break into corporate clients for years and hadn't managed it. "How much?" I asked. He glanced at my mother, then back at me. 30%. I almost laughed. "You want 30% of my company. It's a fair valuation given what I bring to the table," he said. "My client relationships alone are worth." "Your client relationships are regional family law and DUI defense," I said. "My contracts are with AmLaw 200 firms. His jaw tightened slightly. "The structure is in the folder. Read it." My mother reached out and pushed the folder another inch toward me. Claire, your brother has spent a lot of time on this. The least you can do is look at it. I picked it up, flipped through the pages. 30% equity transfer, my brother listed as co-founder, full voting rights on product decisions. I set it back down. This isn't a partnership, I said. This is an acquisition with extra steps. My father spoke from across the room, his voice measured and careful, the voice he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Your brother's firm has been going through a difficult period. If investors see that his practice is connected to an established tech company, it changes the conversation. There it was. I looked up at him. So this isn't about what he brings to me, I said. This is about using my company to stabilize his. My brother's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. It's mutually beneficial. It benefits you, I said. I don't see what I get out of it. My mother's voice changed then. The warmth went out of it the way heat leaves a room when a window opens in winter. You get to keep your relationship with this family, she said. That should matter to you. I looked at her. It mattered to me 3 years ago. You all made it very clear it didn't matter to you. She sighed sharply. You always have to bring that up. You showed up at my office without warning and asked for 30% of what I built, I said. I think I'm allowed to bring it up. My brother stood up slightly in his chair. Claire, be realistic. You wouldn't have half the connections you have without the family name. Our father's contacts opened doors for you when you were starting out. You owe this family more than you want to admit. I went quiet, not because he was right, but because of how completely wrong he was and because of what I knew about why he was saying it. My father looked at me steadily. Sign the agreement. We'll set up a formal announcement together. It'll be good for everyone. And if I don't? I asked. The room held its breath for a second. Then my brother leaned forward and his voice dropped lower, not angry, just precise. The way someone speaks when they have rehearsed what they're about to say. You have a keynote at the Tennessee Legal Innovation Summit next month, he said. Quite a few of your biggest clients will be there. It would be a shame if certain people in that room heard about some of the things that happened when you were getting started. The shortcuts. The relationships you used and walked away from. He tilted his head. People have long memories in this industry, Claire. And reputation is everything in legal tech. My mother looked down at the table. My father's face gave nothing away. I stood there for a moment and felt something settle inside me, something quiet and certain, the way the air feels just before a storm breaks, and you realize you've been preparing for it without knowing it. All right, I said. My brother blinked. All right? I said all right. I pulled the folder back toward me. But if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. I'm not signing anything in a private room with 3 people. A decision like this requires a formal presentation. My full leadership team, our legal counsel, key advisors. I looked at my brother. You present the partnership to all of them. Tonight. I'll have Priya send you the details. My mother looked relieved. My father nodded slowly. My brother picked up his copy of the folder, already settling back into the comfortable posture of a man who believed he had won. That's the professional way to handle it, he said. I respect that. Tonight at 7, I said. I'll see you then. I walked them to the elevator. Before the doors closed, my brother looked back at me with an easy smile. Family always finds a way back to each other, he said. The doors closed. I stood there in the hallway for a breath or two. Then I walked straight to my office, closed the door, and called the one person I should have called the moment Priya walked in. My attorney. Her name is Donna, and she has been my legal counsel since the first year I incorporated. She is meticulous, unhurried, and extraordinarily difficult to rattle. When I told her what had just happened, she was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "Do you still have the original incorporation documents?" "Of course." "And the IP assignments?" "Everything filed before your brother knew the company existed?" "All of it." "Good," she said. "Because I think I know where this is going. And I think you might already know something he doesn't." She was right. I did know something. I had known it for about 6 months, actually. And standing in that hallway watching the elevator doors close, I understood that tonight's meeting wasn't going to go the way my brother expected at all. I need to tell you how we got here. Because the story my brother would tell is not the story that actually happened. 4 years ago, my brother and I were close. Not in the way siblings are close when everything is easy, but close in the way that comes from going through hard things together. We grew up in a house where money was always tight and expectations were always high. My father worked long hours. My mother held everything together with a kind of quiet determination I've always respected, even when I've disagreed with her. When my brother decided to go to law school, I was working as a paralegal and taking night classes in software development. I wasn't glamorous. I wasn't impressive on paper. But I had an idea that I couldn't let go of, a platform that could automate the most time-consuming parts of legal document review. Not replace lawyers. Help them. I worked on it for 2 years in the evenings after my day job. My brother knew about it. He was interested. He had connections through law school that I didn't have, and at first, it seemed like a natural partnership. He would help me understand the legal workflow from the inside. I would build the product. For about 8 months, it worked. He introduced me to attorneys. I showed them early prototypes. People were interested. Then my brother passed the bar, opened his own practice, and the introductions stopped. He became busy. Our conversations grew shorter. I didn't think much of it at first. Starting a law firm is genuinely hard, and I understood that his focus had to shift. What I didn't understand was that he had started telling people something different about my product. Specifically, he had started telling a few of his colleagues that the platform was something he had conceived and that I was the technical person helping him execute it. I found out by accident. An attorney I had met through my brother called me to discuss a potential contract, and in passing, he mentioned something my brother had told him about being the creative force behind the idea. I thought there had been a misunderstanding. I called my brother that night. He didn't apologize. He told me I was being sensitive. He told me that in business, narrative matters, and that investors and clients respond better to a practicing attorney as the visionary than to a paralegal who codes at night. He said it wasn't personal. It was just strategy. I told him it was my idea, my code, and my 2 years of evenings and weekends. He told me I should think carefully about burning bridges. I called my parents. I thought they would see it clearly. I was wrong. My mother said that my brother had a lot of pressure on him right now and that I shouldn't make things harder. My father said that my brother understood the business world better than I did and that I should trust his judgment on how to present things. I remember the silence in my apartment after that phone call. I sat on my kitchen floor for a while. Not crying. Just very, very still. I filed the full IP assignment for every line of code and every design document under my name the following week. I hired Donna. And I stopped reaching out to my family. They stopped reaching out to me too. Within a few months, it was as if I had never existed to them. No calls on my birthday, nothing at Christmas. My mother sent one text message that first December that said, "Hope you're well," and that was the last contact for nearly 2 years. I kept building. I hired my first employee 11 months later. I closed my first significant contract 14 months after that. By the time my brother walked into my office last Thursday, my company had 26 employees, a recurring revenue base that my investors were very happy about, and a product that had won 2 industry awards. And 6 months ago, during a routine legal audit, Donna had discovered something interesting about my brother's practice. Something he apparently did not know that I knew. At 7 o'clock on Thursday evening, my conference room held 12 people. My head of engineering, my CFO, 2 of my earliest investors, 3 senior advisors, Donna, and 2 individuals my brother did not recognize, a forensic financial analyst named Marcus and his colleague Rachel, who had spent the previous 2 hours setting up a presentation on the screen at the end of the room. My brother arrived with my parents. He walked in looking polished and prepared, shaking hands with people he'd never met, projecting the easy authority of a man who had convinced himself that this was already a done deal. My mother took a seat near the wall. My father stood behind her. I welcomed everyone and asked them to sit. "Thank you all for being here on short notice," I said. "Tonight's meeting is about a proposed partnership that was brought to me this morning. In the interest of full transparency, I've asked everyone in this room to be present before any decision is made. My brother opened his folder. I appreciate the formal process, he said warmly, addressing the room. What I'm proposing tonight is a strategic alignment that will accelerate Claire's company into a market segment she hasn't been able to penetrate on her own. He looked around at the investors. My firm brings established relationships in the mid-market legal sector. Combined with this company's technology, we have a real opportunity. One of my investors asked a question about his firm's current revenue. My brother answered smoothly, giving a number that sounded reasonable but was carefully vague. I let him finish. Then I said, before we discuss the terms, I want to make sure everyone in this room has the same information. My brother looked at me. What information? I nodded toward Marcus. About the partnership we're being asked to enter. Marcus stood up and connected his laptop to the screen. A series of documents appeared: financial records, business filings, dates. My brother's posture changed. Very slightly. But I noticed it. These, Marcus said calmly, are the records of 3 business entities registered under my brother's name over the past 6 years. My mother frowned. What is this? The first, Marcus continued, was a legal consulting firm registered in 2019, dissolved in 2021. The second was a legal staffing company registered later that same year, dissolved 8 months later. He advanced the slide. The third is the current practice. My brother forced a laugh. Every business has difficult periods. That's not. The consulting firm and the staffing company were both funded in part by investor capital, Marcus said. He advanced the slide again. A transfer record appeared on the screen. In the case of the consulting firm, approximately $340,000 in investor funds were transferred to a personal account belonging to my brother's brother-in-law during the 4 months before the company dissolved. The room went very quiet. My father leaned forward. What? The transfers were structured in amounts just below the reporting threshold, Rachel said, stepping forward, which is a pattern consistent with deliberate concealment. My brother stood up. This is completely out of context, he said, his voice sharper now. Those transfers were for contracted services. This is a smear. We have the contractor agreements, Marcus said. He advanced the slide again. Or rather, we have the documents filed as contractor agreements, which Donna's office has reviewed and found to contain significant irregularities. Donna spoke then, quietly and precisely. The agreements were backdated. We have the original metadata from the document files. My brother looked at me. His face had gone from confident to something I had never seen on him before. Something cold and a little desperate at the same time. You did this, he said. You set this up. You asked for 30% of my company, I said. Due diligence is part of any partnership discussion. I would have thought an attorney would appreciate that. My father stood up. Ava Claire. What exactly are you saying? I looked at him. Not with anger. I had expected to feel anger at this moment, and I didn't. I just felt very clear. I'm saying that the man you brought here to take 30% of what I built has been misappropriating investor funds, I said. I'm saying that before anyone in this room signs anything, they deserve to know that. My mother's hand had come up to her mouth. My brother reached for the folder on the table. This meeting is over, he said. He looked at my father. We're leaving. He took 3 steps toward the door. 2 people were standing in the doorway. One was a woman I didn't recognize who later introduced herself as an officer from the Financial Crimes Division of the State Attorney's Office. The other was Donna's senior associate, who had filed a formal complaint on my behalf 40 minutes earlier. Mr. Merritt, the officer said, we'd like to speak with you. My brother stopped walking. The room was completely silent. My mother made a small sound that wasn't quite a word. My father sat back down slowly, like his legs had decided for him. I stood at the head of the table and looked at the 3 people who had cut me out of their lives without an explanation, who had shown up at my door to take what I had built, who had believed right up until this moment that I would be too grateful for their attention to push back. My brother turned to look at me one more time. His expression had shifted into something I can only describe as disbelief. Like he still couldn't quite process the distance between where he thought this meeting was going and where it had actually arrived. Why? He said. It was almost quiet enough that only I could hear it. I thought about that question for a second. I thought about the phone call I made 4 years ago, asking him why he had told people my idea was his. I thought about the Christmas I spent alone because no one invited me home. I thought about the text from my sister-in-law that told me I was causing problems with no further explanation, ever. Because some things need to be said in a room full of witnesses, I told him. He left with the officer. My parents stayed in their chairs for a long moment after everyone else had quietly found reasons to step out. The room felt very large and very still. My mother looked older than she had when she walked in. She kept her hands folded on the table, and she stared at them for a long time before she looked up at me. "We didn't know," she said. "About the money." "I know," I said. And I did believe that. I believed she hadn't known the specifics. "We should have called you," she said. "After everything. We should have." She stopped. "I don't know why we didn't." I sat down across from her, which surprised her. I think she expected me to stay standing, to hold the distance. "I know why," I said. It was easier to believe his version. He was there and I wasn't. And once enough time passed, calling felt too complicated. She didn't disagree. My father looked at the wall. Neither of them said anything for a while. "I'm not going to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen," I said. "I can't do that, but I also didn't call you tonight to humiliate you. I called this meeting because the people in this room deserved the truth before making a decision that would affect them." I looked at my father, then back at my mother. And, honestly, so did you. My father cleared his throat. His voice, when it came, was rougher than usual. "What you've built here," he said. He stopped. Tried again. "It's more than I understood." "I know," I said. "We didn't hug. We didn't make promises." My mother asked if she could call me, and I said yes, and I meant it, though I also knew that whatever comes next would be slow and careful and would take a long time to feel like anything real. Some things can't be rushed back into existence just because the circumstances have changed. They left a little after 9. I stayed in the conference room after everyone had gone, with the lights dimmed and the city moving quietly 12 floors below me. Priya knocked and came in with 2 mugs of tea that she set on the table without saying anything, because she had worked with me long enough to know when words weren't needed. She sat down in the chair across from me and we were quiet for a little while. "How do you feel?" she asked eventually. I thought about it. "Like I've been carrying something for a long time," I said. "And I finally put it down." She nodded at that and didn't push further, which is one of the many reasons she is exceptional at her job. Here's what I want to say to anyone watching this who has been in a version of this situation. Not the exact situation, everyone's family and everyone's history is different, but the feeling of it. The particular loneliness of being cut off by people who are supposed to be on your side. The way you keep reaching for the phone in the first few months and then slowly stop reaching. The way you build your life around the empty space they left, and eventually the building becomes real and solid and yours. And the empty space is still there, but it's just a part of the architecture now rather than the whole structure. I want to say that you are allowed to protect what you build. You are allowed to not sign things you shouldn't sign. You are allowed to ask questions in rooms full of witnesses. I also want to say that protecting yourself is not the same as not forgiving. Those are 2 separate decisions made at 2 separate times, and they don't cancel each other out. I don't know yet what the next few months with my parents will look like. I don't know if we'll find our way back to something that feels like family. I hope we might. But hope is different from obligation, and for a long time I confused the two. The day after the meeting, I got a text from my mother. It said, "I've been thinking all night. I'm sorry, Claire, I mean that." I read it 3 times. Then I replied, "I know, Mom. I'll call you this weekend." And I will. What I won't do is sign over 30% of what I spent 4 years building in a quiet room with no witnesses. Some things you keep for yourself. Not out of greed, not out of bitterness, but because you built them from nothing in the early mornings and late nights when no one was calling and no one was watching, and they are yours in a way that goes deeper than paperwork. The keynote at the Innovation Summit is still on my calendar for next month. I'm looking forward to it more than I was before. If any of this felt familiar to you, leave a comment and tell me about it. I read every single one. And please subscribe to HeartPath Stories, there's a lot more I haven't told yet.